Hey everyone, welcome to the Fine Art of Photomontage. I'm Richard Tushman. The following video is an edited excerpt from my signature online course, which is also called The Fine Art of Photomontage. Now, I'm currently running a winter sale on the course, which ends this week. So to check it out and take advantage of the sale, be sure to click the link in the description. Now, in this video, I'm going to share some techniques for applying painterly enhancements to images, which I call the secret sauce. Let's have a look. Okay, I'm going to show you now how I got from here, which is the composited image before I added my subtle paint layers and textures, to the finished version, which looks like this. Okay, so let's go back to the base layer. And the first thing that I like to do sometimes is to actually turn the image into black and white, because I really want to make sure that the values are going to translate into black and white, because that's just the look that I like. So what I'm going to do first, let me turn these off. I'm going to add just a black and white adjustment layer, which those adjustment layers are found under here. There's a black and white one. And that turns it into black and white. But I want it to be a little bit more contrasty than this. So I added another black and white layer, and actually this black and white layer is just a duplicate of the one below it. So it really looks just like this. But what I did was, in this duplicate layer, I changed the layer blending mode to soft light. And so here you can see if I had it normal, it looks less contrasty. But as soon as I change that blending mode to soft light, it's going to make it much more contrasty. And that's one way that you can kind of do this sort of color grading or color adjustment or value adjustment with the blending modes. And then I brought the opacity down to 87% because it was a little bit too much at 100%. And so this gives me just kind of a starting point where I'm going to kind of now sort of go back and pull out some of those highlights. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a regular old paint layer. And I'm going to use, what I did was I used my very soft airbrush, and I just brushed in some, probably sampled, from one of these light areas, and just slightly brushed in some of those areas where I want that sort of like a little bit of a misty light to kind of rest on the figures. Now above this paint layer, we're going to have another paint layer, and this is a very subtle just color layer. And so what I did was I sampled a warm color, and I just airbrushed in that warm color, and I set the blending mode for this to color only, so that it's not going to affect the luminance, it's just going to affect the hue. Above that, I added just a very subtle hue saturation layer, just to bump up that saturation a tiny bit. Okay, and now comes sort of the fun part, because this is where I add my two textures. And I'm going to start by adding a transparent version of this painted texture that I can show you what it looks like at 100%. It looks like that. And this is, I think I painted with oil paint, like an oil wash on like a watercolor paper, something like that. But if I dial back the opacity to 45%, you can still see that image coming through, and it starts to look almost like one of those sort of vintage photographs where you can sort of see the artifacts of the process, and I always love that effect. Now above this darker texture, I'm going to insert another texture, and this is actually a lighter texture which looks like this by itself, another painted texture. But you'll notice though that there is a layer mask attached to this scan texture, and the layer mask itself isn't something that I painted, it's actually an image it's actually a blurred version of the overall image. And so this is actually called a luminance mask. And so what it's doing is it's only revealing the lighter portions of that texture. And so wherever it's dark, it's hidden, and wherever it's very light, it's revealed, and wherever it's gray, it's transparent. And so basically this light texture is kind of filling in all of the highlights of the image, and that's what's really giving the image its definition. So now the question you're probably asking is, how did I create that layer mask? And that's pretty easy. I can show you that. I'm going to go back to my base layer, and I added that black and white adjustment layer over it. So now I have the image in black and white. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my channels palette, and I'm going to pick any, since I have that it's in black and white, all of these color channels, red, green, and blue, are basically identical. So I'm going to pick any one, and I'm going to duplicate it by dragging the thumbnail down to the new channel icon here. And so this is, I have a new alpha channel here that's not affecting the image yet. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the contrast in it. So I'm going to call up a curves adjustment, and I'm just going to bring the shadows down a little bit and the highlights up a little bit. I'm going to click OK, and now I want to actually blur it. And the reason I'm blurring it is because it will give the composite a little bit of a painterly feel to it. So I'm going to go under my filters, and I'm going to scroll down to blur. And lately I've been kind of liking this box blur effect there. And I'm just going to give it a small radius of 3, and I'm going to click OK. Now, so this is what I have now, and this is going to become the layer mask for that texture. And so the way that I'm going to turn it into a layer mask is I'm going to load it as a selection first. So I'm going to hold down my command key and then click on that channel thumbnail, and now you can see the marching ants there. Then I'm going to come back here, and I'm just going to get rid of this layer mask, and I'll as if it weren't there. I'm going to delete it. Okay, so now I still have my marching ants from that loaded alpha channel that we just created, and I'm going to turn it into a layer mask by coming down here to my create layer mask icon and just clicking there, and this is, I'm going to add those extra layers, and so now this is what it looks like. And so you've got some of those highlights with that texture in it. Now the layer above that, if you look at there, it says background copy, and what this layer is, and you can see how now you're getting more detail, and it's starting to take on that more of a painterly quality because you're seeing some of those textures. You're even getting a little bit of softness from that blurred layer mask that we made. So this is actually just a background copy of the original base layer, but I turned the blending mode from normal to soft light, and so that's what's giving it that contrasty, slightly slightly more saturated effect. And then I'm just going to add a curves layer on top of that to bring up some of those highlights a little bit. And then I'm going to add another background layer over that, but here I'm going to reduce the opacity to 60. So again, this is identical to that that bottom background layer and also this background layer here. And so what we're kind of doing is we're kind of working back and forth and kind of adding textures, then bringing some detail back, and blurring it, and then bringing more detail back. So it's kind of working back and forth. And now we're almost done. I'm just going to add a curves layer on top of that to bring, because it was getting I wanted a little bit more contrast. And then I added another vibrance layer just to bring out some of those colors a little bit more. And then lastly, one last curves layer just to lighten it up a bit. And so there we are. And so you can see it's gone from here to here. And there you have it. So please subscribe to the channel and click like if you like the video. And please follow us on Instagram, and be sure to check out our deluxe online course, which again, I'm offering a winter sale on the course, which ends this week. So those links for the course and Instagram are in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching.